The attending physician wrote a single sentence in his report before closing the file and requesting it be transferred to a different department. The garment does not appear to be on the patient. The garment appears to be the patient. When the nurse attempted to remove the clothing during the medical examination, the fabric and the skin beneath it moved as a single surface. No tearing, no bleeding, no resistance. Just no boundary. She did not scream. She did not struggle. She did not ask for help. She looked down at her own forearms and said only, "It doesn't hurt." Then, after a pause, the nurse described as the most uncomfortable silence she had ever witnessed in a clinical setting. "But I'm not sure I'm the one deciding that anymore." Her name was Astrid Voss, 26 years old, 14 months working at a textile factory in Gothenburg, Sweden. Cooperative, lucid. She answered every question correctly. Her system was functioning. It just wasn't only hers anymore. The factory had been producing a new class of fabric since 1919, a hybrid material, wool fiber bonded with cellulose acetate, an early plastic precursor, using a chemical fixative whose full composition was never disclosed in any public record. The process had been patented. The patent described the bonding mechanism in a single phrase: self-completing upon sufficient biological contact. Sufficient biological contact. Workers wore this fabric an average of 11 hours a day. In heat, in labor, in sweat. In 1923, an inspector filed a report that was sealed within 72 hours of submission. 7 workers, none of them could be separated from their uniforms. Astrid Voss was one of them. She lived for another 56 years. She never changed her clothes again. Not because no one tried. The Uppsala researcher's name was Eric Sandström. He spent 4 months attempting to locate the 7 workers mentioned in the 1923 report. He found 3 death certificates, 2 relocation records with no forwarding address, 1 file that had been physically removed from the archive. The folder existed, the contents did not. And 1 name that led him to a care facility outside Malmö, where a woman named Astrid Voss had been a resident since 1927. She was 83 years old when Sandström visited her. She was wearing long sleeves. In July, in a facility where the average room temperature was recorded at 22 degrees Celsius. She refused to remove them. Sandström wrote that she spoke clearly and with complete coherence about everything except the factory. When he mentioned the word Gothenburg, she stopped mid-sentence and looked at her forearms for approximately 40 seconds without speaking. Then she said, "It listens through the fabric." He asked her what she meant. She said, "When I am cold, it tightens. When I am afraid, it warms. It has learned my body better than I have." Sandstrom noted that the staff at the facility had, over decades, developed an informal protocol around Astrid. They did not attempt to change her clothing during medical examinations. They did not apply sensors or monitoring equipment directly to her skin. They documented her temperature as stable, always stable, regardless of external conditions. One nurse, in a handwritten addendum from 1974, wrote the following: "Patient presents no fever. Patient presents no chill. Patient presents no variation. We have discussed whether the readings are accurate. We have decided they are." Below that sentence, the same handwriting added a single line that was partially crossed out, but still legible. "She does not sweat anymore." Sandstrom submitted his findings to 2 academic journals. Both declined without explanation. He submitted to a third. They requested the original photograph as a condition of review. He sent it. They never responded. And when he wrote to request its return, the letter came back marked, "Addressee unknown." The journal had been publishing continuously since 1912. It published its final issue the same month Sandstrom mailed the photograph. He never filed another research report. His last known academic correspondence was a single postcard sent to a colleague at Stockholm University in the autumn of 1982. It read, "Do not wear wool in heated rooms. I am serious. Do not." There is a specific moment described in the 1923 report that the Labor Board chose not to include in the sealed summary. It exists only in the inspector's handwritten notes, which were discovered folded inside the back cover of a different file entirely. Whether by accident or intention, no one has determined. The inspector describes arriving at the factory floor on the morning of March the 4th. He describes the smell first. Not chemical, not industrial. Warm, organic. The smell, he wrote, of something alive that should not be alive. 2 of the 7 workers were still at their stations. They were working, hands moving, eyes forward, productive in every observable sense. The inspector approached the nearest one, a man identified only as K in the notes, and asked him to stop. The man stopped. The inspector asked him to remove his jacket. The man looked down at his own hands for a long time. Then he said, with no particular emotion, "I have tried. It does not hurt. It simply does not separate." The inspector attempted to assist him. He described taking the collar of the jacket between his fingers and pulling upward with moderate force. He wrote, "The fabric moved. The skin beneath it moved with the fabric. Not torn, not resistant, simply unified. As though the question of where one ended and the other began had already been answered, and answered incorrectly." He released the collar. The worker returned to his station. The inspector stood in the center of the factory floor for what he estimated as several minutes, though he noted his watch had stopped sometime during the examination. He wrote one final observation before leaving the building. The worker did not appear distressed. "This was the most distressing thing I have ever witnessed." The factory was quietly decommissioned 6 weeks later. The remaining fabric stock, approximately 400 bolts of the hybrid material, was logged as destroyed. No destruction record exists. No disposal site has ever been identified. In 2007, a textile historian named Maren Holst was researching early synthetic fabric production in Scandinavia for a book that was never completed. She had no knowledge of the 1923 report. She had no knowledge of Erik Sandström. She had no knowledge of Astrid Voss. She was following a different thread entirely: the commercial history of cellulose acetate manufacturing in the Nordic region between the wars. Her notes, recovered from her apartment in Bergen after her disappearance in 2009, contain a section flagged with a red marker and 3 question marks in the margin. She had found a purchasing record from a textile distributor in Hamburg, dated 1924. It listed a bulk acquisition of fabric described as hybrid wool acetate composite, pre-bonded, thermally reactive. Requires no additional fixative for permanent application. The destination listed was not a factory, not a warehouse. It was a hospital. A psychiatric institution on the western coast of Norway that closed in 1951 under circumstances described in regional records only as administrative restructuring. Maren Holst drove to the location of the former institution. The building had been demolished. The site had been cleared. A small residential development now occupied the land. She spoke to an elderly man who had lived in the area his entire life. She asked him what he remembered about the hospital. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said that, as a child, he and the other children in the village had a rule about that building. They did not go near it in winter. She asked why. He said, because in winter you could hear them, through the walls, not crying, not screaming. She asked what they sounded like. He looked at his hands before answering. Like fabric, he said. Like something being pulled very slowly across something that did not want to let go. Maren Holst's disappearance was classified as a missing persons case. It remains open. Her book was never found. Her research drives were never recovered. Her apartment, according to the officer who filed the initial report, contained no clothing. None at all. The 400 bolts of hybrid fabric logged as destroyed in 1923 have never been accounted for. The fixative compound used in their production was never publicly disclosed. The bonding process, according to the original patent, was described as self-completing upon sufficient biological contact. Sufficient biological contact. You have been wearing fabric against your skin your entire life. Most of it you inherited, bought secondhand, found in places you don't fully remember. The archive does not tell you what to do with that information. The archive only records. This file is now closed.